Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for this discussion, which seems to be extremely timely. I've actually had this on the books for a couple of weeks before all the controversy started with the potential appointment of Amy Coney Barrett as a new Supreme Court justice. So we could not possibly have become more timely with this discussion. You can see there are four of us. There are supposed to be five. Kay Fellows is supposed to be here as well. And Kay is having some internet issues, but we will get Kay on here just as soon as we can. If she's as soon as she is able to get her internet working, we will get her into the panel. But while we are waiting for Kay to come, we will go ahead and start with introductions. Jake, you are the only one here that I have never had on my channel before. So Jake, we'll let you go first.
Hi, I'm Jake 3D. I do like the philosophy and religion side of YouTube under the Jake 3D. And then I've also, this channel was Fourth Dimensional Jake, so you may have seen that. And then there's a Jake 3D, which I do like tech stuff and that kind of games. But for the Jake 4D, what I do on my channel is I'm bringing in as many like pastors or preachers, anybody who definitely teaches that God definitely does exist, and just getting their side of the story. What are they about? What is their denomination or religion about? And what evidence do they think is the best for God? And pretty much on top of that, any discussion in the philosophy or religion sphere, I am just happy to sit down and have that discussion. I'm a layman, but I want to learn and I want to hear.
Okay, very good. Kay, can you go ahead and introduce yourself? Oh, we lost Kay again. I'm sure Kay will be back in a minute. Joshua, we'll let you go next.
Hi, guys. I'm pretty new to the YouTube world. Pretty much my premiere was last week when I debated Godless Granny on whether men and women are equal in Christian faith. I plan to start a podcast. Monday of next week will be our first one. If you find me on DLive/JoshuaVN, or you can search Good Morning from Vietnam. That's from Vietnam on YouTube. There's only one episode there right now, and that's actually my debate with Godless Granny, but Monday we'll be premiering our first episode.
Okay, very good. And Susan, can you introduce yourself?
Apparently muted. It was apparently what I am. I was moving the mic and I was just all like, oh my gosh, I don't want to make a whole bunch of racket. So let's start that over. Hi, I'm Susan. I'm one half of the channel Divine Disbelief. We are a secular news and opinion and politics channel. We cover, stuff that has to do with the atheist community and stuff in the religious community that sort of, affects one another. The other half of the channel is my partner, Nathaniel. He's hanging out back there. Yeah, not a whole lot to me, realistically.
Okay, very good. And thank you everyone in the chat for coming and joining us. We're going to go ahead and get started. Kay is having some internet issues, and I really hope that Kay is able to come and join us, because I think Kay has one of the most unique perspectives I have ever heard on this topic, because she is secular pro-life. And most of the people I hear that argue the pro-life position do so from a Christian perspective, and God is their primary argument for it. So it is really refreshing to hear a different point of view. And so I really do hope she is able to get to us. But if not, we will keep up the discussion anyway. And thank you so much for the chat for joining us. I will, if there are any questions from the chat on the topic, I will try to bring them up. Sometimes it is impossible to address a question because I might see it and put it up, but the discussion might have moved on from there, and so we may not get to it. So please don't be insulted if we don't get to your question, or if if we've just moved on too far that we just can't really get to it. Okay, I thought we would start the discussion by talking about when is a person a human being, and what constitutes a person. And I wanted to start at this point because there isn't any point in arguing about certain, late-term abortion if nobody's in favor of late-term abortion. And there's no sense in arguing about whether or not the morning after pill constitutes abortion if nobody thinks that the morning after pill constitutes an abortion. So let's start with that point and see where we have our points of agreement and our points of disagreement. Joshua, what do you say is the point at which a person, which one is a person?
A unique genetic code. And I'll be honest, with the morning after pill, I don't know enough really to know if I'm in favor of it. What I've been told is it's before fertilization. I don't know if that's entirely true, but my thinking would be if it's before fertilization, then I'm not against it. And
Okay. So you're saying that life begins at the moment of fertilization? Or no, you need to get
from my current knowledge right now. But I would say once there's unique DNA, once there's a unique genetic code, it's my understanding from my theological point of view, that's when the soul is bound to the body, and so that's when it's unique human being.
I'm sorry, there's
Cells are
issues
humans.
with your, there we go. Your mic is back again.
Can
What
you
was
hear me
that?
now?
Yes, we can hear you now. What was
Okay,
that
cool.
last thing you said?
I said I look at things from a theological point of view. So a human becomes a human when the soul is there. And I believe that starts when there's a unique DNA, a unique genetic code, when it's no longer the mother and the father's DNA, but it's the combination of the two. So I
Okay.
believe that happens at conception from my limited biological knowledge.
Okay. Kay, welcome. Kay, you are muted. Can you unmute yourself?
Oh
we
no.
lost Kay again. All right, Jake, what would you say is the point at which a person becomes a person?
It's hard to say. I'd say it becomes a fully actualized person at about 26 weeks, 6 months, beginning of the third trimester, somewhere around that point when the brain actually forms and makes all the neural connections, and it's actually a viable pregnancy. I think I would grant personhood as very early, but fully actualized person would be 6 months or so.
Okay. Susan, what's your position?
I'm actually inclined to agree right about there. I know the earliest viability, like the earliest preemie born, I'm wanting to say was just over 24 weeks. I'm wanting to say. And I mean, there is sort of the debate of, moments in development and stuff like that, and I think that's sort of a further on sort of discussion. But yeah, I'm inclined to agree with Jake. So
Okay.
what Jake said.
Yeah, I
And-
think the earliest was is either somewhere between 22 and 24 weeks is what I remember reading. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Granny.
It's okay. You're fine. I am obviously the most liberal of the group. And at first you might think I'm agreeing with Jake and Susan, and to a certain extent I am, because I believe that personhood occurs at viability. However, viability can be different in different pregnancies. And
Good point.
if there are no other factors involved, we can look and say, okay, a viable pregnancy would be at approximately 24 weeks. But I think that if a woman has a non-viable pregnancy, she should be allowed to abort the baby, even if she is well beyond that point.
No, that's a good point. And I think that goes into what I think people use like late term abortion and sort of, I really, really, with apologies, I really, really dislike the term partial birth abortion because that's not a thing. But abortion later on in the pregnancy does not happen just at the whim of the carrier, I guess. I realize that seems like it's reducing, pregnant people down to organs, but I think it's very, very important to make note that it's not just people who identify as women that become pregnant. I know that's a lot of other discussions and everything, but I've just felt that was a very important thing to note.
Okay.
There was somewhere else I was going. I don't remember what.
The Lone Wanderer has asked a very good question. I'd like to address it. And there's two, it's in two separate parts. So the first one says also when the child is born, they have no medical autonomy. So if the doctor says there is no chance, and let me get the second half of the question, that he will live past a few months or he'll have an awful life, then I will let the doctor end the pregnancy or the life. Once the baby is born, I don't think you can do that. But here's the situation that I'm really looking at. And I lived one of these, and I had a very close friend who lived the other. And I'll give you my friend's situation first, because it's the one that's really reflected here. And that is, my friend had a baby with no central brain line division. And she knew before the baby was born that this baby had no chance of survival. And she did carry the baby to term, and she did give birth, and the baby lived for 3 hours. But I can tell you from experience that carrying a non-viable baby is really hard. Now, in my situation, I carried a dead fetus for 3 weeks. And the asinine doctors that were treating me, that came up with the idea that it's a good idea to carry a dead, decaying fetus inside your body, it was there was just no question that it was medical malpractice to force me to carry a dead fetus for 3 weeks.
Yeah. Did they just refuse to do the DNC?
Yeah, the doctor said he thought it was best for me to go into natural labor.
Wow, that's...
Now, this was Army
Oh my
hospital.
God, I have so many words. Words.
Is there any medical reason for that?
No.
At all? That just sounds insane.
This doctor put my life in danger from day one.
On the first
but
one...
anyway, let me finish.
Sorry.
The thing that was so difficult is during those 3 weeks that I carried that dead baby, I almost couldn't leave my house. Because the way people treat you when you are, I was 33 weeks pregnant. People walk up and they pat your belly and they ask you, when are you due? And they got these big, and when you tell them it's dead, they just don't know how to handle it. And so I couldn't go out. I had to stay home for 3 weeks and wait until I delivered this baby. And now obviously that was not an abortion. That was a stillborn. But my friend went through virtually the same situation. Now she was carrying a live baby, but a baby that she knew that would never live. And she had to go through the same thing of people patting her belly and being all excited for her when she's carrying a baby that she knows can't live. It would be much better for her mental and physical health to terminate the pregnancy.
Yeah, I agree. I'm at some point I'm not going to try and respond to everything everyone is saying. I'm very sorry. But I think that's a big part of being pro-choice is, you're not strictly saying, I think everybody should, just have the choice to have an abortion. I think being part of pro-choice is respecting people's decisions to say, okay, I realize, the gravity of the situation. I understand what's going on, but this is what I am choosing. And that's a big part of being pro-choice is understanding that different people are going to make different decisions based on what they think is best. So while it's not what I would have personally done, you have to respect what that person is choosing.
And that's why I think that it really is a matter between a woman and a doctor, because there are so many different situations that can happen, and we can't make a one-size-fits-all law that's going to cover every situation.
You said on your friend's pregnancy there was no brain line division. Is that what you said?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So it's like the brain was all. I don't think I've heard that before.
Yeah, they had told her, the baby could be a cyclops.
Yeah, it means the left and the right hemisphere have no deviation between the two, I think.
Yeah.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And in my view, looking at that from a morality point of view, though, I think that would be more akin to euthanasia than abortion.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about there's no medical chance that this child could live, from my understanding, right? Like it's just
Correct.
completely backwards. So that doesn't seem to me to be the same moral argument as strictly abortion, because it's not about an economic point of view. It's not about they'll live but they have Down syndrome. It's not about their life's going to be different than everyone. It's, does this child die now or in 3 weeks and 3 hours?
Yeah.
Or does it live to like a couple years old in the most excruciating pain?
I don't think it could live for a couple years old. I think
well, not that particular one.
Oh, okay. I see what you mean.
Right. I mean, the baseline for me, like the start is, when it reaches viability, and it's going to be different for every person, due to a number of different factors of where that viability starts. 26 weeks, 28 weeks, 24 weeks. But when you get past that point, it's then you have to start. Hey, is there significant risk to the person carrying it? Is it going to be more dangerous for them to carry the baby? Is it going to be viable at the end of the pregnancy? Is there other medical challenges that would cause it to be like a very excruciating, early childhood and death? These kind of things, these are mitigating factors that would say, hey, you know what, we're beyond the normal viability, but it doesn't necessarily, it's not 100% viable anyways at that point.
It's a quality of life thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Quality of life.
Yeah. And I think this definitely goes back to what Granny was saying, was that it's a matter of, you discuss the options and what you want to do. Like that is definitely what is discussed between the pregnant person and their doctor. It's not something that is a decision that's come to lightly, especially when it comes to abortions later in pregnancy. And so few abortions are actually performed later on in pregnancy. So there are so few that are actually performed after 20 weeks. That is a statistical, such a small number of them. And I deeply apologize if y'all can hear my cat.
Well, that wasn't your cat.
That wasn't my cat?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
But to say that it's a statistical anomaly for the late-term abortions when they're illegal in most of the United States isn't exactly a sincere argument. If you look specifically just at Colorado, I haven't looked this number up specifically, but I think it's almost 10% that are in the third trimester. And so being illegal in a lot of the U.S. does alter our statistics, because late-term abortions would either have to be lied about, or they would have to be done in some other illegal point that doesn't get reported to the CDC.
Well, and I think that doesn't necessarily it's not necessarily a good representation, because just because it is illegal doesn't necessarily mean that it's not, potentially the best avenue. It could cause someone to forcibly have to carry a non-viable pregnancy to term.
Susan, I hate to tell you this. My internet went down about 4 minutes ago.
Oh, was the whole thing gone?
Yeah, everything was gone. What everyone saw was a freeze screen.
Oh
And
no.
yeah. And so and I could not get StreamYard back. I tried a couple of times. I ended up having to restart my whole computer.
Nathaniel says that he was seeing it.
Oh,
'cause
he
he's watching
was.
too. Yeah, so he
Oh.
was
Yes,
watching too.
StreamYard should keep it going. That's the
Yeah.
benefit of StreamYard is it keeps the stream going because we're all connected to StreamYard rather than to you.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good
Yeah.
to know. I learned something new.
Yeah.
Wonderful. I'm glad everyone heard it. Well, I didn't.
Yeah. I'm sorry. But now I'm a little bit brain farty. But yeah, so I think I remember where I was going. And I just because it is not, just because it's illegal does not necessarily mean that it is the best option. And Nathaniel pointed out in the chat, just because it's illegal doesn't mean it's a non-humanist thing to do, because you have to also consider stuff from a humanist standpoint.
Well,
And
I agree. I don't
yeah.
think morality is based on laws. I think laws should be based on morality.
Morality, to me, that is another, it is, while it is related, I think morality is a much deeper discussion, because morality does have a lot to do with, I think it's a term that is, I'm trying to think of not a potentially disrespectful way to say it, because the way that I want to say it could be considered disrespectful. It is a term that is more widely used by religious people. And I think when you want the term,
philosophers and psychologists.
well, I think when you want to use the term moral, I think, what a term that is better suited for that sort of thing is something like ethical.
What's the difference in your definition?
Well, like I said, to me, the term morals has been so widely used by religious people to sort of conflate what is said in the Bible as being something that is sort of the end-all be-all of what should be considered as right and wrong. And I think the difference is that I don't get my ethics from the Bible. I get my ethics from society. And while, yes, there are a number of things that are considered moral, that are considered ethical, there's not a lot, not that there's not a lot. It's there. The inverse is also true. There's a lot of stuff that is ethical that may not necessarily be considered, strictly part of a set of religious morals. Does that make sense?
Well, I kind of disagree with your definition. The only difference between moral and ethics is one comes from Greek and one comes from Latin. If you look at Jonathan Haidt's book, who's an atheist, on the evolutionary moral foundations, he sets up a very specific reason why, even in our, and I don't even believe in evolution, but even in our evolutionary track, we have morals. Plato was talking about morality long before there was ever a Bible. And I don't agree that morals has anything to do with Christianity. I do agree that I have a Christian moral worldview, obviously, but I still don't clearly understand your differentiation between ethics and morality, except I hear Christians say morals and I say ethics to not sound like Christians.
I think this is exactly the right way to look at it. Morals or ethics are just a subset of morals. They're a particular set of morals for a particular situation, where everything, all laws are just widely agreed upon, codified morals. Like,
they're not all widely agreed upon.
Well, no. What I mean is, okay, so you have a law, right? It did that outlaws something. You had to have a large group of people come together and say, hey, we're going to agree that this this moral thing should be punishable if you break this law. It's just a subset of moral. And
in an ideal society, but I don't think any of us here are particularly fond of the 535 men and women who write our laws.
Well, no, you're right. It varies depending on where the law comes from and which, how it gets there. But in essence, a certain group of people agreed that this is a moral thing and this should not be broken. And if you do break it, it comes with consequences in society. So it's all a subset of morals. And I think it's the right way to talk about it. You can frame it in terms of ethics, which is just morals for a particular situation.
Okay, when it comes to abortion, one of the issues is that when you make it illegal, at least the experience that we have had in this country, and this experience is not unique to the United States, it has happened in other countries as well, and that is noncompliance. There's no point in making a law if people are not going to comply with the law. I mean, we saw prohibition is the perfect example. There was so much noncompliance with the law of prohibition, it was just useless. And we saw the same thing with abortion. We when it was illegal, there was so much noncompliance that the illegal abortions were causing a health crisis, a catastrophic health crisis for women. And so making abortion illegal without addressing the underlying issues is just inviting back that health crisis.
By that same argument, couldn't you argue that you should make it legal to kill drug dealers in Chicago?
No, because that's not a safety issue.
Sure it is. Have you ever been to Chicago?
Why is Chicago always what people think of?
Well, first of all,
I'm talking about Chicago because I've specifically worked there in the inner city for an extended amount of time working on the speed cameras. So I was actually in the streets for 8 hours a day. Madison and Laramie is probably one of the most dangerous places I've ever been. And I now live in Saigon. So Madison and Laramie is a specific intersection. So there's massive amounts of a very specific sect of people who are involved in very dangerous things, and they didn't bother me because I wasn't involved in it.
That has nothing to do with noncompliance. If you're going to say that they're not if you're going to say that they're not compliant because they're selling drugs and drugs are illegal, then really what you're making the argument for is legalizing drugs, not legalizing killing drug dealers.
No, the drug dealers would still be very angry if you took a Colorado approach to legalizing drugs where the state got all the money instead of them. There would still be an illegal drug trade in Chicago.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is the problem is that you're making an unenforceable law. And, making it legal to kill drug dealers does not create an unenforceable law.
Yeah, and it's still a matter of safety and personal choice, because the problem with making abortion illegal, and this is something that I know is widely said, the problem with making abortion illegal is that you're not ending abortion, you're ending safe abortion. People are still going to get abortions no matter what, but the difference is that people are going to resort to more drastic measures in order to actually procure an abortion, regardless if it's surgical or medical. And you're looking at things like ordering, which is something that people do anyway. You're going to order medication that claims to be an abortifacient. You're going to try and self-induce an abortion, whether it is surgical or medical. That's still stuff that's going to happen, and it's a matter of that personal aspect.
Yeah, but at no point in any legislative or political scientific theory do we decide that since a law is going to be broken anyway, should we just go ahead and allow it?
We most definitely do.
Can you give me an example?
Yeah, I already gave you one. Prohibition. We repealed prohibition because people wouldn't follow it. Second example is the 55 mile an hour speed limit.
For the tax money.
Second example is the 55 mile an hour speed limit. There was insufficient compliance.
The speed limit one's interesting. Yeah, that's a good point. But neither of these have any moral standing. The speed limit was implemented because of a gas shortage, and prohibition was implemented because of very angry church women. And,
Right, which was
Well,
exactly a moral issue. You know, they felt
Yeah, and
that
the same
draping
could
was
be said.
immoral.
not when you talk about the land of the free and the home of the brave, right? We're talking about putting something into your own body versus taking away the agency of another body. Like it's not conflated. Taking drugs yourself, I have no problem with letting anyone do them, even though they're against my morality. I'm pretty libertarian in most things. The difference between abortion and other things, when you're looking at it from this standpoint, is that it's another human being. And I understand you guys are taking the most extreme outlying cases of when the mother's life is in danger, when the baby's going to die elsewhere, and these are obviously moral gray areas. And we've known since the existence of time that it's next to impossible to legislate for every single moral gray area.
Exactly.
But if we talk about that 1%, instead of looking at the 73% of women who have abortion simply because it would alter their life too much if they didn't, then we're really just trying to focus on that hyper unique case to give us justification for the rest. And that's not how legislation works. And the reason why we have our court system the way that we even do is so that there can be exceptions in this. And I know it doesn't work for abortion as well, because you also need a qualified doctor. But there's no understanding of laws that they're supposed to be applied for 100% of cases. And there never has been since the Magna Carta. There's always been this understanding that the laws are supposed to, it fits in the 80-20 rule, but political scientists should tell you it should be 95%. And so it's a bit of a misconflation, and I don't feel like it's fair to have an argument, especially with me, who's extremely pro-life, against you three, because I'm looking at this from a moral point of view, and you're like, haha, sometimes morality is complicated. And you're 100% right. Sometimes morality is complicated. And I don't have every answer, especially when the mother's life is in danger, because if the mother dies, the baby dies too. So then I lose two people. And my point is about protecting life, right? That's not what I want at all. So if we're going to have something where I think I can be more beneficial and contribute to different worldviews, and we can have a great dialectic, I think it would be better for us to focus on the majority of cases instead of these weird social outliers that obviously we can't legislate perfect answers for. Does that make sense?
It does. And, you know, part of the answer to what you're saying is, you know, there is the expression, you know, hard cases make bad law. And that's true. You don't legislate for hard cases, because then you do often end up with bad law, you know. And so from that point of view, you do make a good point there. However, I think the fact that there are so many different things that can happen is exactly the reason why this should be a decision between a woman and her doctor, and not a decision for the legislature. You know, by making it a decision between a woman and her doctor, that allows for different decisions. And you can't say this is the general rule, but you can have exceptions, because you know, it takes so long to get a case into court that if a woman needs an abortion, she can't run before a judge and get a court order for it.
Yeah, and that's the problem that they run into a lot with minors trying to procure abortions. Like that was a thing with I don't remember what they referred to her as, but that's something with Jane's due process and their whole thing is like they're the ones that helped to, you know, the minor. Sorry, I'm trying to remember and I can't remember. But there was a minor trying to procure an abortion, and she couldn't, and fuck, I'm sorry, I can't remember. Also, my blood sugar is going a little low, so I'm gonna mute.
Talked about the one that had to go a couple hundred miles and out of state.
I don't know if that was the one.
I mean, there's a thousand of these cases.
Yeah,
that people having to go out of state, and then the one I'm thinking of, I want to say she was pretty young, but she had to go out of state, a couple hundred miles. Then they had to wait like a 3-day limit wherever she went, and I don't know. It's pretty bad.
Why was she getting the abortion?
Because
other-
she was a minor, and if I remember correctly, she had been raped.
But
yeah,
no medical issues.
Well, when you have somebody that is that young, that it adds a lot more complications, a lot more potential. Like the risk factor to someone who is a minor having a pregnancy go full term is quite a bit
not
more
a risk factor for a 16 or 17-year-old girl to have a pregnancy to full term.
The one I'm thinking of was like 12 or 13.
Oh, well, then I don't know, to be honest. Okay, I
But
really don't know.
yeah,
That's young. That's right.
But to kind of like an earlier point, it depends on the person. A risk factor for somebody who is 16 is different. Some people aren't as mature at 16, biologically speaking, as they would be at 18 or 20. So there are a lot of people who, just because they're mid-teens, are going to have a lot higher risk factor anyways.
Isn't the trend in the U.S. that women are achieving puberty sooner, and women used to have children starting at 14, 13, only like 150 years ago? That doesn't seem to be logical to me.
Well, that gets super complicated because we have a lot of medical advances that we've had in the last 150 years.
Sure.
So weighing the risk factors of somebody having a child at 14 150 years ago, because it's so young, there's a lot more risk factors. But because it was so long ago, there's a lot less medical advancement. So you have infant mortality rate 150 years ago for both of those two reasons is so much higher. I don't have a way to differentiate between that.
Maternal mortality rate was much higher than 2, and particularly among young mothers. And people hadn't, but one thing I would like to address, you were bringing up the morality issue, and the morality on this has shifted drastically in the last 70 years. Mm-hmm. If you go back to the 1940s, the Catholic Church has been fairly consistent in their position, but the Protestant Church didn't really have a problem with abortion. In fact, there were in Chicago, there was a group of ministers that put together funds to help women get out of state to get abortions.
Sure, it helped them have all their girlfriends on the side. They were evil dudes.
Okay, so if the morality of this is something that's changed recently, how has what a human being is changed in the last 60 years?
I don't think those pastors were ever moral or ever intended to be, or ministers, I believe.
Oh, so no true. So that's like a no true Scotsman argument. Like that's
no, definitely not. No true churchman. I hate organized religion, and I don't think any major organized religion that has any international coalition, at least in Christianity, has any intent in following God's law. They're all scam artists. The Catholic Church has enough money to end all hunger in Africa at the snap of the finger, but they bury it in the Vatican and take money from everyone they possibly can. Like there's no morality of the Catholic Church that's in line with Christianity at all, and there never has been.
So who does have morality?
I believe morality is objective, so I think that morality existed before mankind. So it's our job to seek.
Humans don't have morality.
I don't know what you mean by possess morality. It's our job to seek and to find and to learn.
Well,
but we definitely have a natural instinct for it.
Okay, well, you said the Catholic Church is immoral and organized religion is immoral, but it's immoral to have an abortion. So who makes the decision of what is and what isn't moral if the vast majority of the people on the planet are all immoral?
You know my answer to that's God, right? I'm a theist. So objective morality was before the creation of man and was created by God.
Well, so God doesn't seem to have a problem with abortion either.
That would take a lot longer to explain than I think we have time for from my Christian worldview. God's got a mission to bring about the New Jerusalem and to end the rule of the enemy. There's obviously going to be a lot of pain, sin, and suffering on this world until then. We're a fallen race in a damned world.
Okay. But one thing I'm getting at is of fertilized eggs, 50 to 80% of them are expelled from a woman's body without ever implanting.
Okay.
Of implanted eggs, 30% of them are lost through miscarriage without ever, coming to birth. So if there's a God that is having some kind of feelings for every single one of these conceived eggs, why is he killing the majority of them himself?
I don't know that God has feelings for every kind of conceived egg. I mean, the scripture says, before you were born and before you were in the womb, I knew you. So let me give one more definition or understanding of my worldview. So if you go back to the original word for natural and art, which were originally opposites, natural means done by God and art means done by man, hence artificial. And so when you're talking about that, I think God obviously knows the outcome already. So I don't know exactly what or why that is, and I wouldn't really have any understanding to give, but it is in God's agency to take away life. It's not in my agency to take away life. So that's a really big thing. I don't have the authority, and I don't think other men have the authority to take away life, except in some really extreme circumstances, self-defense being number one. But it's not in our authority to decide who lives and dies. It literally is, from my worldview, in God's authority to do that. So God's not held to the laws that he's given me, because I'm a subordinate, right? So it's I can't kill my peer. We're not God's peers, but an unborn child would be my peer in my thinking.
Okay, that's your thinking, and you say that this is based on a moral belief that you believe comes from the Bible. But
it comes from God. The Bible was made by man.
Okay, so how is anybody else supposed to know what God's thoughts are? Are we all supposed to ask you for this divine inspiration?
Oh, good Lord, no! Please don't. Well, once again, then we're going more into the Christianity discussion, which I think I'd really love to have with you at one point, Granny, but I think it'll derail this. So obviously, from the Christian worldview, we are all, since Christ came, we are all called to be priests. Men and women are called to be priests. Sorry, Catholics. So we need to seek out God on our own personally. Like that's very much the call and the commandment. And if we're going to talk about abortion, we could steer this into an area where we would all really readily agree, because at the end of the day, what matters to me most is less children dying, right? And there are so many things that could be done to promote a environment where women are more comfortable and more able to bring the child to term, especially like I mentioned before, from the statistics I just looked up, 73% of abortions in the US in 2004 were just done because the woman didn't want to carry it to term. So if we find ways in which, I don't have the money, I don't have housing, we're going to be poor, all these economic factors where we could, I know there's going to be problems in our society if we snap of the fingers, if Amy Barrett comes in and just goes, all abortion is illegal. That's going to be an extreme adjustment, and I would assume states would start defying it and nothing would really change, in fact. But there are plenty of ways to start reducing abortions that don't begin with outlawing. Like the destruction of the family unit that's happened over the past 50 years has been way more of a reason that there's abortions now. In Vietnam, where I live, I mean, I've got a few friends who, when they got pregnant out of wedlock, abortion never entered their mind because they had family to fall back on and help them raise the kids so that they can still get an education. Our family unit in America is being destroyed. And if a woman's 16 years old and she's pregnant through rape and she has no serious structure in her family, what is she going to do? We have literally built a society in the past 40, 50 years, maybe even longer, to encourage these abortions, because the destruction of a community of solidarity gives women little to no option. And what matters to me at the end of the day isn't the law. I don't care about the laws. I care about how many children are dying. And there are so many ways to reduce that without legislation.
You
That makes sense?
mentioned the like 70 something percent are just because they didn't want to carry it to term. Where do you have that a link for that study? Do you know who conducted it?
Just threw it in there. I haven't looked at it super in depth. Lawrence B. Feiner, and I just put that link in there.
Okay,
in the stream.
one of the problems with that stat, though, is that there's different reasons why women don't want to carry a baby to term. Sometimes it's because they... What?
It does break them down. It has
Okay.
a bunch of subgroups in that study. One being economic, one being education. And let me find it again. You're exactly right, Granny. And that article does go over it. Guttmacher.org is the site, but I don't know if that's the journal.
Okay. But what I'm thinking of is that, you know, some people do it because they have abusive partners and they don't think it's safe to bring a child into a home where the child is likely to be physically abused. Some of them do it because they have a drug habit and they don't think it's safe to carry a baby to term that's likely to be born, you know, addicted to drugs.
Don't both of those things go into my point about the destruction of the family unit? Aren't people from broken homes more likely to be involved in drugs, and aren't abusive partners literally the definition of a broken family unit?
Not necessarily. I mean, yes, I would agree with you that they are, but you know, if you're going to go by a legal definition, then no, it's not. But Nervardia,
sorry, not legal.
Yeah, Nervardia brings up a good point too, and that is when you make abortion illegal, will women be sent to jail for having a miscarriage? And I have seen cases, even in the United States, and definitely in places where abortion is illegal, where a woman who falls down the stairs and then loses a baby has been charged with endangering a fetus for not being careful, and she fell down the stairs.
I've heard that before. Is that real?
Yes.
Like, that's a real court case? That's insane.
Yes. Yes.
A judge should be derobed.
And yeah, in other countries, it's far worse. You know, if a woman drinks alcohol while she's pregnant, has she endangered a fetus? Has she committed a crime? If a woman smokes a cigarette, has she committed a crime? You know, it really, the problem is that it comes down to regulating what women can and cannot do.
Talking about taking drugs or smoking during pregnancy, right now, as far as I know, we don't have any laws that strictly prevent that.
No,
I haven't heard of it.
That's correct. We don't.
But if you're planning to take the pregnancy full term and have the baby, and you're doing drugs, drinking alcohol, this kind of thing, you're damaging a human life. It's not like you're planning to have a pregnancy. You're damaging somebody who you are expecting to raise, and you're taking this life and making it objectively worse by doing that kind of thing. I don't know what the answer is, if it should be a criminal offense of some kind, but we have to recognize they are objectively hurting a person.
There are so many things that parents do to their children that objectively hurt them, though. I don't. How could we legislate all that?
Well, child abuse is a broad term that already covers that. And denying your kids education is considered child abuse. Denying them medical care, denying them food, shelter, all these things fit under child abuse, and they are a criminal offense.
Real quick, I want to jump back to, I think it was Nervadia's last point real quick, because we're moving on, that talked about incarcerating women who have had abortions. In my point of view, women who have abortions are the second biggest victims in everything that's going on with abortion in the United States. The first, obviously, being the child. But I don't view the women who are having the abortions as culprits. I don't. at all. They're in a society that has told them it's the right thing to do. We even have organizations about take pride in your abortion, shout your abortion. And to me, all this conditioning that's being put on, and plus the destruction of the family environment, plus the rampant drug use that's going on in cities in the United States, plus the depression ratings that are happening right now in our teenagers and our young adults, like, I don't view young women as these evil culprits planning to be baby killers at all. That's a ridiculous theory. I've heard some crazy pro-lifers make that argument, but it's insanity. They're victims nearly as much as the child, in my point of view. So I just wanted to add that. Jake, I'm sorry I cut you off. Keep going with the next point. I just wanted to address what Nirvadia said.
Sorry, my kids walked in. I lost my train of thought.
Okay, no. I have a few things. I have many things. So Joshua, what is it has been asked in the chat, and what do you think about comprehensive sex ed?
What does comprehensive mean in sex ed?
Comprehensive sex ed, it means that it starts from a young age, in that it establishes a baseline of not only what consent is, but it also it is fact-based. It is, it is based in science. It is based in things that actually have been proven to work. It supports the idea of contraception, and it
Okay, I think I can answer it enough, and maybe you'll correct me and guide me to get what you want to know. So one big thing I see as a teacher is I see a purposeful sexualization of young girls, and I'm talking under 14. And that's coming through the internet, that's coming through social media, through a lot of things. And I hear the horror stories in the US education where they're teaching like 8-year-olds to put condoms on. So
that's not
obviously that like I said, I've seen the horror stories on news. I don't know if it's true. I know that nothing from either side of the news media is really true. So when we're talking about children already having urges, sexual urges, that's a good time to start teaching them about sexual ed. Before that, I am 1,000,000% against it. I do think it's the job of the parents to teach sex ed. There's a reality that a lot of parents just don't even want to deal with that awkwardness. And then I go back to the destruction of the family unit is what's causing a lot of these issues. So I think that children need to be educated, obviously. And when you're talking about keeping it objective, keeping it scientific, I'm all in favor of that. And doing
But you're
it
okay
before,
with teaching kids about contraception?
yes.
Okay. There are some
yeah.
people that are against it. So, that was one thing we were trying to establish.
Yeah.
Do they conflate them with the abortion argument, though? Or is it
Yes.
a totally separate argument?
Yes,
What?
very much so.
That sounds dumb.
Okay. So
The
on one
Catholic
hand, it sounds like you are in favor of it. On the other hand, it sounds like you're not.
Yeah, I know.
Like,
because they don't fully
there's
understand what you
no-
mean by it. So I was just trying to give my own opinion about there's an age that's obviously too young to be teaching sex ed. And ideally that we don't live in
Why?
because I see the thoughts being implanted in young girls who would have no sexual drive other than the fact that they're being told by social media they should be sexualized. I see the sexualization of
That has nothing to do with it, though. That's an entirely separate thing.
Well,
Like the idea
Sex
of
ed isn't teaching people to be sexual. It's
No.
teaching people how to have safe sex.
Yeah,
you don't need to do that in elementary school.
Well, true. Not in elementary school, but in elementary
that's my
school, you
point.
can teach them about consent. Yeah, that's the only thing you teach
can
about
teach them you can teach them about consent without ever mentioning sex, though, right?
Well, yeah, of course.
Okay.
Because what
Okay.
you're teaching them is that, no one has the right to touch their bodies.
Exactly. And that my parents taught me that from a very young age, and that's something that should be enforced by teachers, by parents, by respected figures in your community. Like, absolutely, like that's very important. The talking about condoms and birth control pills to elementary school students, I'm not going to be in favor of. Like I said, after the kids are already having the urges, then's the time to educate them. But there is the time to educate them.
What age is correct to teach kids about biology?
Biology, I mean, I understood how eggs got fertilized long before I knew what sex was. So I learned about biology from a very scientifically descriptive way before I understood what was actually happening in humans. So I don't think there should be a limit on biology. When you're talking about contraception, you're specifically talking about human sexuality. And I see how this can mess students up from empirical evidence with my own students. And I teach from, I guess, 8's the youngest student I've ever had, up to 18. So I've got a pretty wide range. And I've seen a lot of damage that especially TikTok has done to
That has.
I understand your point, Susan, but my worry is when I'm just going to endorse something that I don't understand, because I read these articles about, I don't know if I should, I was addressing Susan and she needs a second. So there are horror stories that I see on the news about very young kids getting very graphic sex ed, and it appalls me. But I don't know if it's real. I don't know if it's true. The news wants you to be scared about everything.
Then if we can't verify it, then it's a moot point.
Well,
Yeah, let's move back to our topic. I only wanted to go far enough into the issue of birth control to see where you were as to whether or not you felt that that was a form of abortion, because the Catholic Church is of the opinion that it is.
Right.
But you also indicated that you were okay with the morning after pill.
From my understanding of it, it doesn't seem immoral to me.
Yeah.
But I haven't really researched it that much. The way you guys described it is the way I've been told in the past, and no, it doesn't seem like abortion to me. It seems like a totally different thing.
What about a medical abortion?
That be one to save the mother's life?
No. A medical abortion is when a woman takes a pill that causes her to have a miscarriage. And it can only be done in the first, now Susan would have better stats on this than me. I think it's the first 12 weeks you can do a medical abortion, or is it 14?
Yeah, it's the first 12 weeks, and it is typically done within the first 8.
And 90% of abortions are done in the first 12 weeks anyway.
I would still say that that's immoral. When it comes to legislature, like I said, I'm more concerned about the morality than the legislature. I'm more concerned about how do we prevent all these types of abortions? How do we help women so that they don't feel helpless, so that they don't feel like they have no options, so that they don't feel
and
like
that is sorry, because I was out for a second.
Yeah.
That's the thing with comprehensive sex ed.
Okay,
is because comprehensive sex ed not only reduces the number of abortions by teaching kids about contraceptives, by teaching kids like what sex is. That's the problem with stuff like abstinence only sex ed, is because not only does it teach kids, hey, just don't have sex, when, like you were saying, it is a biological thing. Like, kids are going to have sex one way or another. Why don't you just teach them how to have sex safely? And places like Colorado, where they said, hey, we're gonna give teenagers and young women free IUDs, that also reduced the number of abortions. Like, that's
it's also
thing.
Interesting to note that abortions, at least in the United States, are highest in the Bible Belt. The people who claim to be the most against it have the greatest incidence of abortion.
Yeah, and that's the thing with a lot of Christians, is that the only moral abortion is my abortion. And when it's 1 in 4 women that are having abortions, so what if? Okay, let's do this. If you were to, like, what would you ask somebody who has had an abortion?
I mean, I know people.
Like, would you ask them about, like, thought process? What would you tell them?
I would try to show them as much love as I could. I don't think. I mean, I know people who have had abortions. I know 2 women, and I never felt the need to ask them any questions.
Okay.
If they talked to me before they decided to have the abortion, I might have questions and I might have a lot to say. But afterwards, I would just try to show them as much love as I could.
Okay. It's actually better than I was expecting. Not gonna lie to you. I just the
But if a
problem.
woman comes to you and tells you that she wants to have an abortion and you say that's wrong because you're damaging a human being, and she says,
I don't think I would start there.
well,
Go ahead.
okay. But let's say eventually you get there and she says, yeah, but my boyfriend's beating me and I'm afraid he's going to beat the kid. And I really don't think it's safe to bring a kid into this family. But I can't get away from him because I'm financially dependent on him. I have no other options. What do I do?
In the U.S., I would reach out to some friends of mine who work at an organization called Loveline, where they pull girls specifically out of those situations and give them housing and give them everything they need for their children. That's Loveline. If anyone in the audience would like to look them up. In Vietnam, I would probably do something a little more extreme to get their boyfriend out of the picture. But it's so different here because the family structure is intact, and I've not met many girls. I even know a few prostitutes who have had children and they don't have a family structure, and the mama-san, for lack of a better word, helps raise the child. Like it's such a weird differentiation here. And I looked online about the abortion statistics in Vietnam that told me they were 50%, and then I looked into the Vietnamese source that didn't even give any statistics. So I have no idea where that's from. But you're not asking me questions I have a prepared response for, but I would try to help her feel like she doesn't need to have the abortion. I wouldn't try to beat her over the head with my Bible saying it's wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you mean exactly, because that's one of the things that I keep responding to Christians is, if you really want to end abortion, then what you've got to do is address the underlying problems. You've got to address
100%.
Poverty. You've got to address domestic abuse. You have to address drug abuse. And I just don't think that making abortion illegal is the way to handle the problem. You've got to go handle the underlying problems first.
I don't think most Republican politicians want abortion to be illegal because I think they really like being able to run on, and we're pro-life. Like, I think it's a talking point for a cabinet. It doesn't seem to me they have any vested interest in making abortion illegal. They're not trying to help the women at all, that's for sure.
So what about the southern states where they are actively trying to make abortion illegal? That are typically Republican states, like they're in the South, but they're typically Republican states. Like it's places
they all get
like
overturned,
Georgia.
Right? They all get overturned.
They haven't gotten challenged far enough to get overturned. But
Oh,
that's the problem. That's the problem with someone like Amy Coney Barrett, is that when she has not only taken money from specifically anti-choice organizations and has signed off on anti-choice advertising.
She's pro-life. She's pro-life. She's written
anti-choice and pro-life are the same thing. You do realize that, right?
I understand. But I mean, I could call you anti-life and be pro-life. You understand?
No. That's the thing with being pro-choice. Did you miss that earlier when I said, the woman who made the choice to carry the pregnancy to term?
Mm-hmm.
Like, did you miss that part? That's the part of being pro-choice is the idea of, hey, if you want to make the choice to have an abortion, that's fine. If you want to make the choice to have a child, that's fine. There are plenty of women who not only, might have had a child and then had an abortion, or, had an abortion and then had a child. Like a good majority, and I don't remember the statistic off the top of my head, I'm sorry, but a good majority of the women who have abortions already have a child. That's the thing.
Be curious on that stat.
It's I can probably find it at some point, or someone can send it to me. I just don't know. And yeah, Navardio is right. Pro-choice isn't pro-abortion. There are there are people who, and I admittedly am one of them, who I have raised money for abortion funds. I have been to Shout Your Abortion things. I have been a speaker at Shout Your Abortion things. I have had an abortion. It is not a huge part of my life, but it is something that I am not ashamed of. I don't conflate having an abortion with being immoral.
I understand, but you understand that I do.
You conflate the two.
No, they're not conflated. They're directly aligned in my worldview. It's not a conflation.
Great.
So you say Susan is immoral?
I believe that action was. But let me preface this back to what I said with Nirvadia's first statement. I believe that women are one of the biggest victims in all of this. So like there's nothing.
You believe that I'm a victim then?
I do. Yes.
Why do you believe that I'm a victim? I am not a victim in the slightest. In any way, shape, form, or fashion am I a victim. Like I said, I have raised money for abortion funds in order to help women receive the care that they need. I have worked for Planned Parenthood. I've been a representative of Planned Parenthood at multiple things. I have been to Shout Your Abortion events. I have talked about it. I've talked about it openly with people.
I understand, but that's not what's making me think that you're a victim.
You think, and correct me if I'm wrong, do you think I am a victim because I have somehow been subjected to this idea that I should have an abortion? That it's okay?
If we're gonna go on that tangent, I don't have a problem with it, but I really am not trying to be insulting, and I don't want to bring.
Well, you are though.
Level.
That's the thing.
By stating my
honest
opinions, I'm being insulting. Would you rather just not? Why would you be on a panel with someone who disagrees with you if they're going to give you their honest opinions and be insulted by it?
Because I genuinely thought that I wouldn't be called a victim today.
I mean, wouldn't most pro-lifers call you like a cruel baby killer? Wouldn't that be more insulting? Like, what did you expect being on a panel with someone who disagrees with you? I mean, I'm really just talking about my worldview, my understanding, and my opinions. I'm not.
And that's like your worldview is fine, but the instant you bring somebody else into your worldview,
you brought yourself into my worldview when you said you had an abortion and you asked me if. Oh no, I'm sorry. Actually, Granny asked me if you were immoral. I apologize. We don't need to make this personal. I never had an intention to do that.
The problem is that you say this is your worldview as if you think that your worldview is not shared by people who have done some really atrocious things. Do you know who Dr. George Tiller is?
I do not.
You don't?
But
okay. So Dr. George Tiller
does horrible things. He doesn't share my worldview.
Dr. George Tiller was murdered by an anti-choice extremist coming out of church. Dr. George Tiller provided abortions after 20 weeks that were due to non-viable pregnancy. Dr. Tiller was one of the small handful of abortion providers who would provide abortions later in the pregnancy. There have been anti-choice people who have firebombed Whole Women's and Planned Parenthoods.
But
they have
killed. My worldview isn't built around my pro-life belief. My pro-life belief is very much a extension of my worldview, I don't think that the person who killed Dr. Tiller shares my worldview at all.
Yeah, you can not think that all you want, but the fact of the matter is,
my worldview
this
wouldn't let him do that.
the person who murdered Dr. Tiller not only described themselves as a Christian, but they also described themselves as being pro-life.
Describing yourself as a Christian doesn't make you.
Oh, you're no true Scotsmaning again. You're
No, you have to
wait a minute,
follow that.
Susan. I want to hear something from Joshua. Joshua's told us, that the Catholics aren't Christians, the organized church aren't Christians. Who gets to decide who is and who isn't a Christian?
Yeah.
Christ. But no, other Christians obviously can. We're called by Christ to judge our brothers by the fruit that they bear. This really means we look at the actions of our brothers and we decide whether they are true Christians. If your action culminates in you killing Dr. Tiller, the reason why it's up to me is because I'm also a Christian, Susan, and we are called by Christ to call out people who use Christ's name, but then act in opposite. We are called to speak out and condemn them. We're not called to go around and tell, like, Granny an atheist. I'm not called to say, Granny, you're not living a Christian life. In no way. But if Granny came to me and said she was a Christian and she was going around bombing abortion clinics, I absolutely would be called to vocally and publicly condemn her. So it is for the Christians to judge who are Christians. And I am not alone or unique to follow Christ in the way that I do.
You're right. You're right. But the thing that I find amusing is that all of the Christians are pointing at other groups and saying, I'm a real Christian and you're not. Sure. And because everyone's all pointing these fingers.
I understand.
and there's supposed to be some kind of objective truth behind all of this.
Yeah. Like that's the problem. That's the problem, is that if you say that it's objective, and every single denomination says that they have the truth, and they are the ones that have all of the answers to all of this. Who the hell is right? Who is the one that actually gets to be the arbiter of divinity?
Well, that would be Christ. Like in my worldview, but I want to go back to what you said.
I think I'd like to address what you just said. If Christ is the arbiter of divinity, more power to him. Let him. And when the day that he comes down and tells us that abortion is wrong, I'll be the first one in line to vote against, that abortion is wrong.
Numbers 5?
Just tell him to come and speak to us.
Do you know Numbers 5, Joshua?
Numbers 5, I don't.
Yeah,
Numbers 5. The verse, not off the top of my head.
Yeah, because that one specifically tells.
Is that how to drink the right thing to
the bitter water?
Yeah, exactly right. I'm no fan of Judaic law or traditions. I've never really deep dived into the context of that one. But that would be
the woman.
What is medical abortion, right?
It is how to perform an abortion.
And it's because the woman is suspected of adultery.
Yeah, which it is basically saying, if you think your wife has cheated on you, you don't even have to officially say, there doesn't have to be any evidence for it. It's just if you suspect your wife of cheating on you, and if she is pregnant, then this is how you perform an abortion.
Maya
this is what you do to. Oh, hello, tiny human. Hi, tiny human.
Numbers 5
it's like 5:17.
The rights of the husband matter more than the life of the child.
Right.
The pride.
There is nuance to the verse, but in the end, it does condone abortion because of the rights of the husband.
Right. Well, hold on. This scripture does specifically say it. This is if the woman says she's never been with someone, right? Only. That's the
No,
only.
she's
that's the
married.
No,
only
this
way.
is
She's been
Yeah,
with her
right.
husband.
married,
You know,
and he thinks that she's cheated.
But it says, and I agree that Judaic tradition is awful in many ways. This would be one. But it says if the man has a fit of jealousy and asks his wife if she's laying with another man and she denies. So if you follow this text exactly, it's weird, but it's not supposed to be a purposeful abortion because she should only drink the bitter water if she hasn't had sex with anyone but her husband.
Which
It
he
should
can
be-
make the
no,
accusation based on absolutely nothing.
My morality has nothing to do with Judaic law.
Okay.
Oh,
just,
okay.
just
Whoa,
to put,
okay.
Cherry
No, no,
picking.
that-
just to put, no. I'm taking
Where
the
does
scriptures
your
in context.
Okay,
how
so
exactly do you verify or set up your morality? Where does your morality come from, and how do you verify or justify
Does
it?
it come from Jesus, which is New Testament, or does it come from God, who is both?
Got it. It definitely comes from Christ, who's also both. And if we want to get into the theological debate of the grounding of my morality, we can, but it's really off topic. But I
Well,
don't mind.
But that's
Granny,
the problem, is that if you're
should I
saying
go
that
down
it's
this?
based on morality, like if you base your worldview in morality and you view abortion as immoral,
Mhm.
then
But I can't put
you're
I can't put
basing
my theology
abortion on the
bumper sticker.
Bible.
I
You're
mean,
basing abortion on the Bible, which there is not
no,
only
no,
an
no, no,
example
no,
of
no.
abortion.
No.
Jesus himself does not say anything about abortion.
No, Jesus just says if you harm a child, you should kill yourself.
yeah, but where does Jesus ever say that the unborn are considered children?
Your
Where
father,
do you-
my father knew you before you were even in the womb.
But that's Old Testament Jewish law, which said you rejected.
But Jesus
That-
is quoting.
No, where in the New Testament do you see that?
I don't know.
Before you
Where
were
is that
born, I knew you.
rule?
It's in Jeremiah. It's in the Old
Yeah,
Testament.
Okay, then it
Jesus-
is in the
Jesus
Old.
quotes
Yeah, I'm
Jeremiah
sorry.
and Isaiah all the time.
Well, yeah, he did, but not that verse. So you're saying that because Jesus quoted Old Testament law, then
I'm
Old
sorry,
Testament
I'm
law
sorry,
is
you're
just
right.
as valid.
I'm sorry, it's Romans. Paul quotes it. not
Jeremiah
Jesus.
1:5.
Romans 8:39 or 8:29.
Well, you told me the other day that you rejected Paul too.
I did not. I just said Paul talked in subjective truths that can't be taken literally for all situations.
Well,
When-
then,
when
hey,
Paul
why
says
can't we
it's
take
against
this
the
as a
law-
subjective truth that we don't take literally?
Well, when you see the same trope reoccur multiple times in the scripture, there's more of an indicator that it's objective. But when Paul says women shouldn't speak in the church of Corinth because it's illegal for women to speak in academia in the Corinthian law, that is not a rule that women aren't allowed to speak in Christianity. So the Bible is assembled by men, by fallible men. The Old Testament specifically was assembled by 100 different rabbis in around 70 AD. Or sorry, I don't remember the year, to be honest. It was assembled by Pharisaical rabbis, the very rabbis that Jesus kept saying, "You
Jesus
have no
would have been a
love."
Pharisee.
70. It's why it's called.
No,
Jesus
no,
would
no,
have been
no.
a Pharisee.
No, he was absolutely not. He constantly talked against the Sadducees and the Pharisees. And the Pharisees are literally how I describe the Catholic Church. The people who wave their Bible and wave their rules and do all this evil underneath. Like Jesus talks at length about these. And these
So what
people are known.
denomination are you then? What denomination are you?
I don't have a denomination.
You're just Christian?
Yeah, he's just a he's
An
an
evangelical?
Was your argument against the Old Testament that the fact that it was compiled from old documents and probably also oral traditions from about 700 to about 400 BCE?
That's my problem with the parts that have been taken from what they call the oral Torah is absolute pure evil, and it is an absolute the oral Torah is in pure contradiction with everything about Christianity. It really is.
What I must have missed, what parts of the New Testament are any better?
Yeah, what parts of the New Testament aren't oral? Specifically.
Oh, I'm sorry. There really is in Judaic law, there really is a theological differentiation between what they call the written Torah and the oral Torah. So
Right.
when the religions of the Nephilim resurfaced after Noah, they didn't write them down because they feared God's wrath once again. So they would hand these traditions that weren't in their writings. The book of Enoch talks about this quite a bit, that weren't in their writings down generation by generation by generation. And that is what the Pharisees followed. The Sadducees didn't. The Sadducees were scholars that said everything about the Bible is metaphoric. There's no resurrection. There's no real spirits. It's just, these are the laws to keep everything down. The Pharisees were the ones that followed this oral tradition. Like I said, this is a really big rabbit hole that I would love to go down, guys, with, but I don't think.
Yeah,
Well,
I don't think we
we've
have
been
the
going
time.
for an hour and
I-
20 minutes anyway, so it's been interesting. I think it has been good. I think there have been some points made, and I think it's been a good discussion. But all things do have to come to an end, and so I think what we'll do is at this point, I'm going to let everyone have an opportunity to give any closing comments that they would like to give. And then after closing comments, I'll give everyone an opportunity to shill for themselves, and then we'll say goodbye. So Joshua, you have been in the enviable position of having to defend yourself against people who are against you, and I'm sorry that happened. Kay was supposed to be here and she was supposed to be supporting your position, but unfortunately Kay had internet issues and was unable to join us. So I do appreciate your being able to support yourself, and I hope you don't feel like you got ganged up on. So okay, very good.
Sorry.
So we'll let you go with any closing thoughts you might have. Go ahead, Joshua.
Well, I want to thank you all for having me on, for being incredibly cordial in this heated topic. Susan, I do apologize if I offended you, and maybe we got
Yeah, I do too. I am sorry.
Okay, cool.
Sorry.
I'm glad that we can laugh at the end of it. I really think it was a great discussion, and I feel like we were probably in maybe 8 different discussions that each could have been 90 minutes all at the same time.
Yeah.
Granny, I would love to do one with you just on why I don't like the Catholic Church. I think that would be a lot of fun, and we'd have a lot of agreements. Oh, look at that little guy. He's awesome.
So blonde.
So I just want to thank you all for having me and for being respectful. And I had a wonderful time, and I thought this was a really, really good discussion.
Okay. Susan.
I don't really have much. Hi, my name is Susan. I had an abortion over a decade ago. I'm pretty fucking awesome. Sorry. I just realized I didn't know if I could. Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
Everybody says that, but I actually don't have a problem with it. Just because I don't use those words myself doesn't mean I have a problem with other people doing it.
I just wasn't sure because I wanted to be respectful of your channel. I'm very
I
am
no
sorry.
problem. No problem. Jake.
Yeah, on this topic, it's like all bets are off. It's gonna get heated or words. So there's a number of things that would probably change my position. If we had near perfect birth control for both males and females and other genders, then like we're talking 1 in 100 billion, not 1 in a million, like 1 in 100 billion perfect birth control, then my position would move. If we had artificial wombs perfected, I know they're working on it with sheep, but as far as humans are, my position would shift, or at least it would definitely be open for further discussion. Right now, because of the position we're in, medically, socially, education, the only moral thing to do is to allow abortions at least before the pregnancy is viable. After that, assuming a number of other things don't come into but like the risk and a non-viable pregnancy or non-viable like days after, something like that, then it would be an extraction. Like if truly the abortion is the only thing for you and you're past that viability stage, it would be an extraction, an early thing. So I think that it just, yeah, I guess that's where I want to leave.
Okay.
I knew he was poking. Yes. Your kid rules.
He keeps
They are
waving
fun to
directly. He keeps waving to you, Susan.
Hi.
She says hi.
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 Everybody says hi.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, little one.
He's the best.
Couple of closing thoughts that I would have is that, you know, determining at what point the unborn become a person is very difficult. And I think it's clear that it does not happen at the moment of conception. Whether it happens at implantation, I really don't think so. There's just not enough there. You know, there's no brain waves. We determined that life ends at the moment the brainwaves stop. It makes perfect sense to say that life begins when brainwaves start, which really is around the moment of viability. I shouldn't say moment, but you know, it's right around the same time as viability at around 24 weeks. The real problem is that we can't make abortion illegal without taking care of the underlying issues that lead to abortion. And until we can get rid of poverty and drug abuse and domestic violence, you know, making abortion illegal is just going to cause more women to die. And there aren't going to be more unborn that are safe because the mothers are dying too. And Susan, you brought up earlier, and I didn't get a chance to mention that I live in Alabama.
Oof.
And Alabama is the state that passed the most strict abortion law ever. There was no exception to save the life of the mother.
Mhm.
There were no exceptions, period. It was passed, it was signed by the governor, but it was struck down before it even took effect. So it never was the law, but yeah, and it was passed by an all-white male legislature.
That's not surprising.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm really tired of men thinking that they have the right to tell women what they can and cannot do, as you saw from our debate the other day as well. So with that off my chest, I think it has been a good discussion, and I will now give everyone an opportunity to shill for themselves. So Joshua, what do you have coming up on your channel?
If you look at Good Morning from Vietnam, I'm going to start a podcast basically counting down to doomsday, which would be the election. And like, let's be honest, it's not good no matter who wins. And that's it. Once again, thank you so much, Granny, for having me. You've been such a gracious host.
Thank you. Susan, what do you have going on?
Well, we might have a stream tomorrow. I don't entirely know. Hopefully. I don't know. We'll see. Every Saturday, I have a show on divine disbelief. It is called Explain Like I'm 5. Last week I had Heath Enright. This week I have Dawn Ford, voice of fantasy and adventure. So I'm very excited about that. We hopefully will have some new series coming out soon about, you know, America and all the just America. And then we'll be finishing up our one on the Lucan census eventually. So
Yeah.
eventually. Nathaniel laughs because he knows it's eventually. Everything's eventually. Yeah. Like and subscribe.
Okay. Jake.
Thank you. So I have a couple of talks coming up. I'm not sure when we're going to be able to get them scheduled, but I do have Richard Madsen, who's supposed to come on pretty soon here. Hopefully I can get that scheduled. And if anybody knows any pastors or imams, priests, anybody who teaches that God exists, send them my way. I think I have my email listed on the YouTube, but you can always get me on Twitter.
I have all of your Twitter and your YouTube channels listed in the description of this video.
Awesome. And
Except Joshua, I don't have a Twitter for you.
Oh, okay. I'll send it to you if you want to add it later.
The last thing I wanted to say was you have no empathy for those you don't know. As your familiarity with somebody grows, so does your empathy. Now we create in our minds a model of people we've never met or never seen, like those on the other side of the world. So we do have kind of like a base empathy, but we do need to get out there, talk to people who are different than you, who think different than you, look different than you. Get out and talk to people, build that empathy, build that understanding, and build those bridges.
Okay, very good. All right, right now I am working on a project on homeschooling and basically what's wrong with Answers in Genesis homeschooling curriculum. I'm not exactly sure when it will come out. It's a collab project with Brainbug because some of it is on insects and I need a little help from Brainbug to finish that one. Next week at my usual stream time, which is 7. Now this stream was a little bit later because Susan Susan is on the West Coast and wasn't home from work early enough to do my usual time. But next week I will be back to my usual time at 7. And I will be having my 1,000 subscriber celebration. The collab project. Yeah, the collab project that I did with Viced Rhino just blew me away. I mean, I was at 640 subscribers. And at the end of that project, I was at 1,500. So yeah, we skipped pretty quick. So I'm doing that, and Godless Engineer will be here for that. Viced Rhino said he will pop into the chat for a bit, but he's busy that evening, so he can't be there the whole time. And so that's that. And then after that, I'm doing a collab with Mama Atheist on climate change. I'm not sure exactly what aspect of climate change we're going to be doing, but we're going to be talking about climate change. And so with that, thank you everyone in the chat for coming. You've contributed some good comments and some good things to help guide the discussion a bit. And it's been a good discussion, even though, it is a very heated topic and it is a difficult thing to discuss. So thank you everyone for coming today, and live your life. Bye.